Hey, this is Sugar Hill. You're watching Lights Out.
This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, proudly sponsored by Spartans Law. We're here in sunny Manchester for a huge fight week, the highly anticipated rematch between Liam Smith and Chris Eubank Jr. Delighted to be joined by the main ring announcer of Sky Sports and boxer Big Mo. Big Mo, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. The sun is shining. I didn't know the sun actually came out in this city. Every time I've been to Manchester, it's been overcast, it's been raining, so I love that the sun is out right now. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you for asking. I'm excited for Fight Week. It's the first interview of Fight Week. I always enjoy interviewing you. We have so much to talk about. We've just had a good discussion about AEW All In, which obviously we can't discuss on here, two different types of sports, but let's start off talking about what went down in Poland on Saturday night between Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois. It's gathered a lot of publicity, given the fact of what people are really discussing, which was the controversy surrounding the low blow in round 5. Just want to get your initial thoughts.
Look, I think it was a 50-50 call. Listen, you got to understand, I come from a sport where controversial calls happen all the time. I played American football. First one to have video replay. They review all the calls. There's always complaints about the referee, so I'm used to this. I think what it comes down to is, a couple things. Number one, from what I gather, I believe that depending on what commission referees are a part of, there's slightly different interpretations of the rule of a low blow. I believe the ABC looks at a low blow as anything below the belly button, versus some of the other governing bodies, it's more in the groin area. So there's a bit of interpretation of the rule. I'd have to check on that, so don't quote me on that, internet, but I believe different commissions look at low blows slightly differently. But regardless, look, Usyk won 99% of that fight. Controversial, I understand why it's controversial, but I don't think it made or didn't make the fight. I think that Usyk still put on a clinic. I still think he showed why he's the heavyweight champ, regardless if it was the right call or not. So, listen, in a sport where you have human error, whether it comes from judging or refereeing, it's never going to be perfect. And I think that's kind of the beauty of sports, is that there's always going to be controversy.
So obviously a lot of people are not going to ask you this question throughout Fight Week. Yeah. I'm glad I'm the first one. In your opinion, was it a low blow? Be honest, Big Mo, be honest. Do you think it was a low blow?
I'm going to say no, but at the same time, it was close enough to where I'm not mad at the call, in my opinion. How I look at it is that, so in American football, for example, when you challenge a play, let's say something is called a fumble. To overturn it, you need what's called conclusive evidence to say, no, we need to change the call. If you can't find conclusive evidence for one way or another, you say the call stands. If you find it conclusive on the side of how you already called it, you say the call is confirmed. So the point is, there's always going to be gray area. So do I think it was a low blow? No, I think I could understand why a lot of people say it wasn't, but at the same time, am I mad at the referee for calling it the way that he did? No.
A lot of people reckon that Alexander Usyk has a pull over referees, that he reels the referees in too easily. Someone said that he did it with the Joshua fight. Do you think that's the case, Big Mo? I
don't think so. I think we should give the commissions and referees a little bit more credit. I get to work with a lot of these people. I see scores before anyone else does. You know, I'm underneath the referee's arm when they square off. I see the preparation the referees put in. I think we should give them a little bit more credit than that, just to think that just any fighter can just snap their fingers and make any call that they want. I don't think so. I think the commissions and referees put a lot of time and care into their work, and it's sometimes a thankless job, like we're seeing right now. So no, I don't think that there's a corruption or anything like with this. I think that it was a 50-50 call. The ref made his call in the instant where he thought it was correct, and we move on.
Okay, yes, let's do that. Let's move on and let's talk about why we are here, because like I said, it's a highly anticipated rematch between Liam Smith and Chris Eubank Jr. Have you had a chance to watch the build-up? The gloves are off, and what's your thoughts going into this rematch, Mo?
I am loving this rematch more and more by the day. And I think it's a lot closer of a rematch than people think. I think that Chris, from what I can tell, obviously I haven't been in camp with him, but I think Bomax really got a good game plan for him, really got a good setup for him. I watched some sparring footage today. Chris Eubank's sparring partner really does a good job of emulating Liam Smith's, real just come forward style, high guard type of thing. So I don't know, man. I think it's, I mean, my brain leans towards Liam Smith just because of how dominant the first fight was. But man, I don't know. But overall, I'm psyched for the event. Huge card, great night.
One of the talking points about this fight is the fact that Eubank Jr. has teamed up with Bomac. We all know what Bomac has achieved with Terence Crawford. But obviously it's a switch from Roy Jones Jr. to Bomac, which is not a bad switch at all if you think about it. But what does Bomac do differently with Chris Eubank Jr.?
Well, I mean, my guess would be, again, I'm not in the camp, I'm not trying to act like I'm there knowing what's going on, but there were a couple key things that were talked about in the build-up. The first one is apparently Chris Eubank's been really coachable, according to Bomac, which, from what I've heard in the past, may have been a weakness of Chris. Bomac's got him in a system. Chris was talking about the fact that Bomac has an infrastructure versus when Roy did it, it was just Roy. Maybe Chris is going to benefit from being around a group of guys, being around a team, seeing that type of infrastructure. So I think if nothing else, I think that the game plan, and we talk about game plans all the time, but the game plan that Bomac is trying to institute and trying to implement, I think that Chris is going to listen, which I think is going to obviously help him. You never want to hear about a boxer that doesn't listen to his coach. So I think we're in for a hell of a fight.
Chris has obviously stated in The Gloves Are Off that he believes he was dominating that fight. He won practically every second of that fight up until the knockout. What was your memories of that fight before the knockout? Do you believe Chris had won every round, and do you believe he was dominating the fight?
I wouldn't say dominate. I don't think either of them were dominating, and it's hard to say someone was dominating when it was only 3.5 rounds, right? It happened in the 4th round. So I'm not going to sit here and say he was dominating. Liam didn't really look phased. I think Chris was working the uppercut well and landed some good shots and broke Liam's guard, but I wouldn't say dominate by any means. And obviously the ending was in a dominant fashion and Liam smothered him. So I think the first fight was competitive. Competitive in the instances before the knockout happened, before the knockdown happened. I think this fight's going to go longer. I think this fight makes it definitely past round 4. I don't know if it makes it the full distance, but I think we're in for a really competitive fight.
Yeah, fingers crossed it does live up to expectations. Just a few more things to talk about, because I know obviously you've got a ton of work awaiting for you, but Savannah Marshall crossing over to the MMA. Are you surprised by that move?
I am. But at the same time, it's good exposure. It's her trying something new. I think when you have a lot of these boxers that have become undisputed champions, become unified champions, become champions at all, maybe at that point they feel fulfilled in boxing and they want a new challenge. Maybe Clarissa and Savannah maybe the boxing Clarissa thinks that she got it, she's got it figured out, and she wanted to go try MMA. I know that she had a deal with PFL, and maybe Savannah goes, you know what? Let's do the rematch in the cage. Who knows? But I like it. I always think the crossover is interesting. I think a lot of purists on both sides, whether it be MMA or boxing, they don't like when it happens. I think it's cool because I'm a fan of both, and I like seeing crossover audiences. So, listen, I love Savannah, I love Clarissa. I obviously was the announcer for that historic night at the O2, so I'm rooting for them both in their lives and their career. And if the rematch happens at the cage, I'm going to watch.
You mentioned you was obviously part of that historic event, so was I, and it was a great week to be a part of. But surely that rematch is, we want to see it in terms of boxing. Do you think it will sort of gather the same audience as it would in a boxing match?
No.
If it goes over to the PFL?
I don't think so, nor would I expect it to. Both of their followings are in boxing. That's just reality. And they're two of the best women boxers in the world. In my opinion, Clarissa Shields is the best women's boxer ever. So that's where their following is. I don't think it's an MMA. I think people will watch, absolutely. I think it would garner a big audience and people would be interested. But no, in my opinion, the rematch needs to happen. I think it will. I'm wishful thinking, perhaps. But when you go back and when you watch it, how competitive that fight was. Clarissa's team was talking about how that was her toughest challenge with Savannah. Savannah's got that power that a lot of other women don't have. I believe that fight still needs to happen. I definitely want to see the rematch.
A negative point in boxing right now is yet another failed drugs test. Anthony Joshua's last opponent, Robert Helenius, failed a drugs test along with Alicia Baumgartner, who's obviously worked closely with Sky Sports and Boxer, and of course Dillian White. Now, surely now we're at a stage where we need to start stamping down on failed tests in this sport. Are you surprised with how many failed tests we're getting, especially with it coming from Matchroom and DAZN? And two, when do we sort of, put an end to this and start handing out lifetime bans? And if you had to make a decision on someone who fails a test and also returns a negative B sample, what would your punishment be?
Well, look, again, I come from a heavily regulated sport. American football, when it comes to drug testing, is very heavily regulated, even in college, right, which technically isn't professional. The key is to have a standard. You can't dish out different punishments for different people. I think that this isn't a Matchroom conversation. This isn't a DAZN conversation. This isn't any specific entity. This isn't a commission conversation. This is coming down to the governing bodies in the sport need to have a standard. If test ends up with X, the punishment is Y. Every time. It doesn't matter if it's one thing or another. It doesn't matter how hard you appeal. It doesn't matter how big your brand is. If you test positive for a drug that makes the sport unfair, it needs to just be across the board. It needs to basically be where, cool, the test comes in, you do this, maybe you're given one opportunity to appeal or prove your innocence, maybe there's a reason for it, I don't know. But if that doesn't justify, if that doesn't fly, you receive the same punishment as everyone else. It needs to be standardized. That's the only way to literally keep the standard in the sport. And if we want this standard to be a clean sport, well, then we need to defend it being a clean sport.
Before I let you go, you know what I'm going to ask you to do, right? Tell the viewers why they need to tune in on Saturday night.
Let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, last time Smith Eubank fought, in my opinion, was the best atmosphere in boxing that we've had in a very long time. I was in the ring and it was literally shaking. And now we have a rematch with even a bigger card. Adam Azim, Fraser Clark, Michaela Mayer coming across the pond. We have Mark Heffron and Jack Cullen. We have Florian Marcoux. Stacked card from top to bottom. If you want to watch not only good boxing, if you want to watch good sport, if you want to watch good entertainment, if you want to watch good content, then I will see you on Sky Sports Box Office here in the UK. I will see you on ESPN Plus, and I will see you in the ring. Peace out. Follow me. Follow Boxer. I'll see you for Smith Eubank 2 on Saturday.